All right. Music playing, Chris.
Ready to roll.
So that must mean it's another edition of the Tech Jam Session with Chris and Mike D. Hope you're doing all right.
Yes, sir. How about you?
Yeah, man, I'm doing all right.
Been rolling.
I know. It's been a busy fall in a good way, a very good way. But we're coming up close to the end of the year and getting ready for the holidays.
Yep.
So, Chris, it sounds like we have another amazing founder, CEO, Sarah Sachinis here, and we're going to bring her on in just a few minutes to let her tell her story and talk a little bit about her new cool company, Meduloc. But first, Chris, I want to hear how NAS was. I didn't make it out to NAS this year, but it was just last week, and I saw some pretty interesting posts on LinkedIn, but curious, and I think our listeners will be curious to hear your 2 or 3 takeaways from NAS.
Sure, absolutely. So it was a better one than the prior year. It was in Denver. I don't know if the location had anything to do with it. Last year was Chicago. Next year is San Antonio. And I would say that the activity on the floor was definitely better. I mean, there was a ton of international surgeons, but there was still a U.S. surgeon presence as well. All the exhibitors that were there, I was seeing really good booth traffic around several different ones. That was interesting, and you're seeing a lot more robot, but you're also starting to see a little bit more of the influx of AI technologies. We saw a lot more of that than I've seen even a prior year ago. So very positive. Everybody's pretty bullish, I would say, in terms of finishing out 2025. I mean, the statements have all been the same. It's been a tough year for fundraising, but there are several that I know are headed toward that exit process. As I think I might have mentioned too, maybe about the AUKUS meeting, is DePuy J&J's presence was very well felt from a spine perspective and engaging. So that was great. Of course, VB Spine was right there sitting next to Stryker Spine. And they had a lot of booth traffic over there because obviously the new brand and company. But yeah, I mean, overall, I would say that fusion is still fusion. More MIS and spinal endoscopy entering the fray big time. And I would say that there were a few companies there definitely that are focused on the motion preservation aspect of what they're bringing to the market. You did see a few different companies too that are playing or twisting around with material plays, right? Instead of PEEK, going to PEC, all the different types of the way you can approach a technology when it comes to material science. Very prevalent. And I would say that, there's only so many times you can turn that coin. You know what I mean? Before it's like, okay, what if we make it out of this? I mean, and we're reaching that point. And I think there's a lot of folks and companies that are thinking through this and really realizing they need to put a more serious twist on what they're bringing to the market. It can't just be those little iterative type of things, but things that are really going to change the outcome patterns in spine, period.
Yeah. I think there's still great opportunity in spine because the clinical results are still not awesome. The clinical results of a total joint, a total hip, or total knee are amazing. I mean, the best surgery as far as patient-reported outcomes of all surgery, not just orthopedic surgery. Whereas spine has got a long way to go before I think the outcomes come close to what in total joint replacement. So I think shout out to all the companies that are trying to make that happen, because there are a lot of patients who are suffering with chronic back pain. And I know you've experienced this yourself personally. If you have chronic back pain, neurologic pain, it's miserable.
It's miserable. It's awful. It is not. It is so, just demotivating is probably the best word on every level that you can think of, because it's just like, I want my function back or without pain. Now, it could be, and this is something we're going to watch, and when we're still doing this podcast, when we're 60-ish, I think we'll have a very good indicator.
Like next year. What do you mean?
No, say it ain't so. But what will happen is that there is this falling of the wall, the barrier between the interventionalist and the neurosurgeons and the ortho spine surgeons. So the market is ripe. There's so much of a perfect storm brewing between all the spine companies that now have new identities and all the things that are happening in the pain management market relative to spine and the ASC plays and endoscopy. I mean, we're on the verge of a big change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it usually comes down to the hands of the great entrepreneurs and founders.
That's right.
Do that. And we've got another one today. These are the favorite people that we like to talk to on the MedTech Jam session. And speaking of material changes or materials making a difference, an underutilized material, and it's starting to be utilized more now, is nitinol. It's an amazing material. And this company, Meduloc, who we're going to talk to Sarah, the CEO, with in just a moment, has come up with a really novel way to deploy nitinol in a way that I think will improve functional outcomes for lots of different applications. So we're super excited to welcome Sarah Sachinis. Episode number 24. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Yeah.
Very good.
Good.
How about you?
I am very well, thank you.
Excellent.
Well, we're super excited to hear more about Meduloc. Just got 510K approval. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think it bears repeating. But before we get into that and nitinol and the journey with Meduloc, tell us a little bit about Sarah. How did you get to this point?
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for inviting me on your show. So I got here being the US. So I moved to the US 7 years ago. So my career, I started off in the corporate world, AstraZeneca, pharmaceuticals, then moved into medical devices. So Smith & Nephew, same as I know a lot of us ex-corporate people. So went through the whole sales and marketing, decided I wanted to run my own business. So I left to set up my own distributorship and consulting business in the UK, mainly bringing over innovative technology that didn't have a channel or resource to do that. So bringing it into the UK and Europe. So I did consulting as well as distributing, was running that business for a couple of years. One of my clients was a company called Trice Medical, which was based near Philadelphia. So long story short, the CEO at the time, who I know you guys have had on this show, Mark Foster, he is probably one of the best salesmen you're ever going to meet. And did a good job of selling me the opportunity to move to America 7 years ago to run commercialization for Trice Medical.
He needs to put that on his resume.
Right.
Life is greatest achievement.
Well, thank you. So and honestly, his kind of sales pitch, it was 100% the right decision. His sales pitch was come to the US, you want to run your own company, get the exposure of the US market, which is obviously the single biggest market. It's get the exposure to investors and the exposure to the US market, which was the one area I didn't really have experience of, so that I could go away and do it bigger and better with that learning opportunity. 100% the right decision. So I, over the 7 years, learned a heck of a lot of what to do, a lot of what not to do, which is always the best learning experience.
Yeah.
But ultimately, after doing that for 7 years, I was looking for that CEO opportunity to really run my own company. Mm-hmm. I was looking at a few different opportunities. Meduloc was by far the most exciting in terms of the product, like you said, a whole new material and the market opportunity for this. So I joined the company. I was consulting them for a few months, and then I joined the company as a full-time CEO in October last year. So just over a year.
Awesome.
Oh, great. So Meduloc, it was formed out of a venture studio, correct?
That is correct.
Speak a little bit about that. Let's probe that a little bit, because I think that's an underutilized model. But there are a few great platforms that are available to founders and creators. So talk a little bit about your relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So Core Medical Ventures, a venture studio based in Southern California. So they have around 9 companies in their portfolio. So ultimately, they, depending on the opportunity, depends on how much they invest. And that comes in the form of effectively sweat equity. So it's a really nice story with Meduloc. So it was founded around 10 years ago from a hand surgeon, and he founded it, and he approached them with a problem. So it's a really nice story in that he didn't come to them with an idea. He came to them with a problem and said, I need a solution for this problem. And then together they worked on for many years, many different iterations, finding a solution for that problem. So I like the fact that it was, taking his clinical expertise with their engineering expertise and developing a product together. And they provide so many resources to get through that process. They have over 15 expert engineers, QA, RA. So you're tapping into not just, 1 or 2 engineers, you've got the whole shebang to really round out and tap into their various skill set and expertise.
They already have a quality management system. So as a new company, you can leverage that, which is a big deal.
Absolutely.
That is a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it saves us so many. It's one of the reasons they brought me in. So I had, as a CEO, so I have a lot of commercial experience, and they have obviously the R&D experience. So it enables me to really focus on obviously fundraising, but as well as really setting us up for commercial excellence. And I don't have to stress about the QARA and the compliance side, and even the finance they are managing. So it really frees up my time and energy to really focus on the commercialization. So it's a really fantastic business model. Highly recommend it for founders, particularly at this
And I'm
stage.
sure your P&L looks a lot better than if you were doing it all on your own.
It does. And honestly, and I know I was chatting to Mike about this earlier, like trying to convince investors of this story, like this is real. Like our financial model, yes, I know it looks like,
It's like there's no way.
You can't be this capital.
Exactly. So it's going into like, okay, it's because we have this model. It's because we have access to core medical. It's because they are literally providing all these services, which is how we're able to get the P&L. And also, moving forward, we're able to continue to tap into that resource and make it as efficient as possible. So it's a very capital lean model.
That's great.
Yeah. Shout out to Michael Collins and the group at Core. They do a great job. If you're a medtech leader, you know how challenging it is when you go to market with a new product. You also know how important it is for your sales teams to be aligned to the purpose and mission of the company, to be connected with each other, and to be equipped with the tools and resources to quickly train on your new technology, but also have efficient and quick access to all the tools that they need to move the sales process as quickly as possible. And that is the platform that we at Convey Med have created for you. It's called Convey Connect. Built for medtech sales teams, it is a unified mobile platform. It is one app for training, for sales content, includes a private news feed so your sales team can engage with one another, and an AI-powered expert, which can provide intelligent answers to technical and clinical questions. So for example, if you're a sales rep, you meet with a physician, they ask a question you don't know the answer to, you can query your own AI agent. It will give you the answer, and then we'll give you the resource from which that answer came from. It's giving you immediate credibility as you are going about your sales process. If you are interested in learning more about Convey Connect, go to our website at conveymed.io, where you can book a demo, and we'd be happy to take you through the app. And now on to the show. So you said that the surgeon came to Core with a problem. What was that problem, and has that problem evolved during that period of time? Or not the problem, but I guess the definition of the problem, or the problem they chose to solve, did that change?
So the problem was the initial problem they were trying to solve. So he's Dr. Josh Huster, our founding surgeon, a hand surgeon based in Arizona. So the story is he was getting frustrated. There's been so much innovation and development on long bones. So it's kind of what you guys were saying earlier in the podcast, that there are some areas that are just lacking that attention and that innovation, such as spine, whereas the same with small long bones have been lacking the attention, whereas larger long bones like femur, tibia, technology significantly developed, but it really just hasn't in those small long bones. So he was just really getting frustrated with having to make compromises, not being able to find the right solution. And what he was getting frustrated with was ultimately going through a joint. So while the technology is massively improved, just talking specifically around metacarpal, with the introduction of intramedullary nails around 8 to 10 years ago, made a big difference. It was much more minimally invasive, but you have to go through a joint. It's a rigid device. So the only way to access the bone, the metacarpal bone, is to go through the joint. So he was like, okay, it's still the best available option. And that is what most surgeons are now using today for metacarpal. But obviously going through a joint, we're in orthopedics. Like, you want to preserve a joint and cartilage. And he was just like, this can't be the end of the innovation in this space. So that was why he went to Core Medical, spoke to them about this problem, and helped me design a solution for this. So they did a whole bunch of surgeon interviews, looked at all the different materials, which obviously included a new material of nitinol, which ultimately allows the flexibility to avoid the joint. So the flexibility of nitinol means that you don't have to go through the joint. It's not rigid. You have the flexibility to take a different approach, but you still get enough stability, and you also have a distal locking prongs as well as screws that provide that strong fixation. So that was kind of multiple iterations to get to that point. And in answer to your question around did it solve that problem, it solved that problem and beyond. So what came out of the development process and the iteration of the metacarpal is not only can you access the metacarpal without going through the joint because of that flexibility, you can get into other bones throughout the body. So throughout the design process, they were getting feedback, oh my God, this would be amazing for ulna, this would be amazing for radius and clavicle and fibula and metatarsal. So we ultimately developed 5 different sizes so it can be used across multiple applications. So it didn't just end up solving one problem, it's now solving multiple problems with the same platform with different sizes.
So with being the platform technology, let me ask you, how big do you see the ability for fracture healing? And what I mean by that is, are we talking humeral? Are we talking tibial? Or, the whole 9 yards, the big intramedullary canals?
So ours is designed for anything that's non-weight bearing. So based on how we are positioning this. So in theory, it can be used. We have very wide indications. It can be used across all bones, but we're very much promoting it for non-weight bearing. So, and that in itself is a huge market.
Oh, it is huge.
So for metacarpal forearm, clavicle, we see absolutely huge opportunities. And then there's the whole lower extremity, fibula, metatarsal, again, huge opportunities within that. So as you can imagine, my biggest challenge is being focused and not trying to go after everything. We obviously want to prove the concept in as many of those as possible. But as you know, they're different customers, they're different sales channels. So we're trying to be as focused as we can with the limited resource, but ultimately trying to prove the concept that we can be used effectively across all these different applications.
Okay. And so this side of commercialization, as you're planning forward, well, each of those, I get to ask all the questions now, by the way. I didn't get to ask at MNVC.
You're being nice to me at MNVC.
Would each of those require a new 510K for expansion of indication, or?
No, we have a very broad, so we, as Mike mentioned, we got our 510K 2 weeks ago, which was a huge milestone for us. And it's a very broad, based on the bench testing that we provided them and other results, that we have an indication for pediatrics as well as adults for all fractures.
Awesome.
It's a very broad application, which is great. But again, it all comes to, it's great having such a big application, but it all comes to the marketing. We want to have the highest success rate and we want to put our efforts into, where this will be, obviously we'll get the most uptake with the fewest barriers.
That's great. That's a big deal. So it's a platform technology with practically platform approval.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a pro move. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, that's core medical. Like they know this process. Like they know how to get 510K. They've done it so many times, and they know what testing they need to do to get certain indications. So we don't have to go back through the process to get additional licenses. So it's good.
So the stage at now, you have FDA approval. You're ready to go to market. You're getting ready to do a limited launch. Kind of what is your sort of commercial mindset in the next 6 months? Are you going to go big? Or are you going to go focused? You alluded to it a little bit. How do you maintain the discipline?
So we are having a very focused approach. So ultimately, it's a balance of trying to get a good amount of revenue and traction, but also proving scalability to strategics, which is the main goal. Like we want an exit. We want an exit as soon as we're able to for obviously a high valuation. So ultimately the goal is to go very deep in a very few geographies. So being very disciplined about that, which I'm having to say no to a lot of surgeons right now because we are being so disciplined about this approach. Yep. So we're only focusing on 4 geographies around the country, which again means that we're more capital lean because our sales resources are just in these 4 geographies. And we're going to go very deep in these geographies for mainly starting with upper extremity indications and then expanding to lower extremity. And the goal is if we can prove enough traction, scalability within these 4 geographies, that the goal will have an early acquisition. If not, we will expand out those geographies. But again, in a very targeted approach. We're not going to do a whole full national launch or a shotgun approach. We're being very targeted with the main goal to prove scalability to strategics.
Yeah. If you were to, break out the geography and be able to look down at the number of accounts that you hope to attain, obviously that's a great plan to deal with the fewest VAC committees as possible.
Well, and that, absolutely. there is also that, yeah. And, the nice thing about our product as well is it can be used in ASCs as well as hospital systems, so that the approval process is generally obviously a lot shorter in the ASCs. So we're trying to target a good balance of both so that we can get early adoption.
Great.
Is this going to be single-use sterile packed everything, or do you have a little tray that goes with it? How will the product be distributed into the operating room?
So it will be fully sterile, completely disposable for the implants and instrumentation. For the initial alpha launch, which is the goal is 150 cases, we will be doing that with a reusable instrument set and disposables, just because it means we can get there a bit quicker from a manufacturing perspective. But once we get through those 150 cases, everything will be fully sterile beyond that.
Oh, that's an interesting model. So
it is a good model.
Limited market release, you're going to do reusable while you're building your single-use sterile, just so that you can go a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
That's a great model.
I like that.
And to that point, there could be learnings in the reusable format that get to be exemplified in the final disposable format.
Yeah, and again, it's this balance, because we want to make sure we've got it right, which we're very confident we have. But again, I'm sure you've seen this, where you press go and you order 1,000, 2,000 plus kits, and it's not ready, and then you're like, well, what do I do? Is this like, are we throwing this in the trash, or are we going to try and sell a product that's not quite ready? Whereas we have this luxury, we are going to do these 150 cases, make sure that we've got this 100% right before pressing go on those bulk orders.
Exactly.
So that we're not just throwing cash away.
And and I think another element to that is knowing the balance of how much surgeon input do you take that is transferable across all the docs, and not just trying to serve an N of one.
Absolutely. So this is why we're doing 15 surgeons, minimum 150 cases, getting feedback from every single one of those cases for multiple iterations. And the big thing as well is we're trying to make sure that we're having as few surgeons as possible affiliated with the company. Again, we don't want all those 15 surgeons to be paid consultants, because again, you, for various reasons.
And it's something that you don't want to be overarching in the mind of a strategic down the road when they go, well, what percentage of your business came from these guys?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a balance, because obviously we want these guys to use it, but we want to do it in a way that they're using it because they genuinely want to use it. And that's strategics.
You're giving some really good insights, I think. And to Mike's point, that maybe some of the better ones that we've been hearing that are a little bit more out of the box, right? In terms of the approach. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, again, it's lessons learned. I mean, I've launched a lot of new products in my time. When I was at Smith & Nephew, I was going through that stage where we had multiple shoulder products coming out. And then at Trice, we launched 4 or 5 new products. So again, this was, the method that worked the best. It's doing it. It's really hard to, you guys know this, right? It's so hard to come back. If you take a product, it's not ready yet, or you haven't perfected the technique and you're taking it to a surgeon, the case doesn't go well, it's really hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
And reputation is everything for us at this early stage when it comes to strategics. Obviously, most importantly, we want these cases to go well. We don't want them to get into the hands of surgeons where the technique isn't perhaps right. So we're trying to limit that. But it's a balance, because we don't want to obviously slow the revenue traction too much. But the most important thing is we're doing this in the right way, because you can't come back from it.
Yeah, smart, really smart. So everybody's favorite thing to do as a CEO is to raise money.
Is it?
So I'm curious to know a little bit more about the fundraising journey for Meduloc coming out of a venture studio.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the total journey, and then where you are now, and are you currently raising, and so forth.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And in all seriousness, it's, as a first-time CEO, it has been something that has been you doing it in, solo. And honestly, I have really enjoyed it. It is, I think the thing that surprised me is how much of a sales role it is. I mean, you're selling the company, and I love sales. So I've really, I'm a salesperson at heart. So I've really enjoyed that aspect. Like, it obviously, as time goes on, and it's a very slow process, and I'm not a patient person, so that's been a challenge. But in answer to your question, we did a seed round or convertible note before I joined. Then, as we were closing the Series A, round, I came in as CEO. So we started raising our Series B, which really terminology, if you want, we're really more like a Series A in terms of the terminology. So I try and point that out because I know a lot of investors get really hung up in like, oh, Series B, you're too far ahead. And it's like, well, actually, we are more like a Series A if you think about the stage that we're in.
Right.
So anyway, we started, when I joined in October, we started actively fundraising in March. So we're raising a 4 million round. We already have a term sheet for lead investor for the first 2 million. So we got that term sheet a couple of months ago, which was a huge achievement, especially in this market. So we have commitment for another 700K. So we're looking at closing the full round, ideally by the end of the year. We have a lot of investors in final due diligence, but really trying to accelerate that as much as possible so we can focus on commercialization.
And to that point, it's like we do a ton of fundraising for a lot of clients across all the specialties of musculoskeletal. I look at this, you tell me your perspective because I'd love to hear it. How did it feel with the fundraising at the very beginning of this cycle? And how are you feeling about it now? Is it loosening up? Is it that people are at least listening? What are you seeing?
It's a good question. And I mean, obviously a lot of it is timing with, the market and the market opening up again, but a lot of it was the summer. I mean, I started fundraising in March, which honestly is not a great time. I feel like to start fundraising, certainly from what I'm experiencing, so many of the investor meetings are really starting in September and go on through till March. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of quieten down in the summer period. So honestly, from my perspective, I do think it would have been better to have fundraised in that more of what I see as the prime period. So I'm certainly now, since the summer, like so much more activity from investors, which I know, is a lot of, the market is opening up again. But I do think it's also a time of the year from what we've experienced. So it's
good perspective.
But the main thing is to continue. Yeah.
I echo that totally. I mean, I'm bullish about 26. I mean, we all saw Charles Hamilton's Piper Sandler presentation, relative to expectations in the new year. But I also know that we were thinking that at the end of 24 too.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully the macroeconomic picture continues to be, stable for investors to consider, putting some at-risk capital to work for companies like, Meduloc and other earlier stage, Series A stage companies, because the ecosystem will not thrive unless it does. So
has to change.
Yeah. And I would say, 100%. And the feedback that I've had since fundraising from, and, speaking to multiple investors, over 50 different investors, is that either they are currently struggling to close their own fund, or that's dragging out longer than they would like, so they're not able to deploy yet. Or if they do have a fund, they're reserving it for their existing companies because of the uncertainty of what's going to happen to their existing portfolio. So it's it's trying to find the sweet spot of investors that have a fund that they're comfortable deploying externally to new companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's spin it a little bit to the strategic side and preparation for what we all hope is eventual. And where are you seeing that they are taking interest relative to Meduloc? What are they saying to you, especially in terms of, wow, this is so differentiated, or, this would allow us to do so many things that we just cannot address today? Because they're not making it themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started engaging strategics really around kind of Academy AAOS earlier this year. Mm-hmm. They're obviously very early stage. So feedback, and I've met with the majority of our potential strategic targets, and feedback is pretty consistent that this is incredibly differentiated. There's excitement around the fact that it's not just a Me Too product. The fact that it is using a whole new material of nitinol, which really is an absolutely incredible material in what it can do, particularly around that, it's got the super elasticity that can really help in terms of micromotion at the fracture site, which can, in theory, help with healing. In addition to that, its modulus is much closer to bone. So that means that it acts more like natural bone. And a lot of these strategics right now, especially around trauma, there is so much more focus on enhancing bone healing. and the biologics around that. So it's really resonating with them, not just the fact that it's flexible, we can avoid the joint, it's better access, but that increase in healing. And obviously we need to prove those claims, but the material itself, it makes sense in terms of the, how it performs. So, and also a lot of the trauma portfolios, they've been lacking innovation. So there again are companies out there that this isn't necessarily just about Meduloc and the opportunity. It's about what it could do for the rest of the portfolio by kind of jazzing up the brand and the portfolio, because it's adding something really differentiated. So feedback's been super positive. Obviously, we need to prove that it's going to work. That's the next step of doing the alpha launch and getting cases. But so far, very consistent positive feedback, which is great.
Yeah, we had a podcast. One of our other clients is the Orthopedic Trauma Association. We had a podcast with one of their, leaders, and his quote was basically, and I'm going to paraphrase, bone prefers an intramedullary healing, a device for healing, as opposed to a plate on top.
Correct.
Absolutely.
It's just a much better healing environment. And there's a trend towards more intramedullary fixation, even with, the fibula nails have become super popular. The new tibia nails that are coming out they're trying to expand the indications to do more periarticular fractures because they prefer intramedullary. So your device plays perfectly into that trend.
Absolutely. And then that's why, particularly around forearm, there's a lot of excitement because, it's very difficult to put an IM nail into the forearm fractures right now, whereas ours, with that flexibility, you can. On top of that, pediatrics, it's huge because right now, especially for small long bone fractures, the small IM nails don't really exist right now. So we got our first approval in a pediatric hospital, one of the best in the world, before we even got FDA approval. That's how much of a need
That's great.
So, yeah.
But you do hit a great point relative to, we'll call it the sleepiness of the trauma market for so many years. It's like you look at it and you go, how much breakthrough tech has there really been? I'm not talking AI and stuff like that. I'm talking about treatment of the fracture site. How much has really been out there? You've had internal fixation, external fixation, nails, whatever, but this is a little bit of a breakout, in my opinion, which is great.
Yeah. Thank you. And it genuinely is. We're not just another nail. We're not another wire. We are a whole new category of fracture fixation. And if I had a bunch of money to pay a marketing agency to just come up with a name for that new category, that I would. And at some point we will. But we're a whole new category. We're not an IM nail. We're not a wire. We're something else. We're Meduloc. We're a totally different design of treating fractures.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need a big marketing agency. Just pay $20 to Chat GPT and you're good to go.
Well, that's a good point.
There's something there. There's something there. Maybe mine and Mike's challenge is to help you with that.
No, I think you're right. I think redefining a category, if you can do that, is huge.
Then you own it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The category is it's Meduloc. Maybe that's just the name of it. But the category is Meduloc.
There's something there.
There's definitely something there. Well, last question. So you raised your $4 million. What's next? Summarize your use of funds and what do you want to accomplish besides the 150 cases? Is that the end goal or?
No, the end goal is a strategic acquisition. If we can do that after the first 150 cases for a value that makes sense, that's the dream. That would be amazing. That's very much plan A. There's also a plan B, which is to continue to scale the business to a point where we get to a point in revenue that makes sense for strategics. So at that point, plan C is we keep going, and we do have a plan where we can utilize that 4 million to keep going and keep growing revenue. Again, being incredibly focused, very disciplined, putting in the sales resources, which as we know is where the most of the spend goes is into a sales channel. If we can be really focused about that sales channel, do it in limited geographies, we can continue to be very capital efficient and stretch out that 4 million as much as possible. So the goal is to get a strategic exit with that 4 million. Yeah. And then plan B would, is we raise more and go further.
And put the focus on the fact of I've got 4 million to go build a business. If any of those points prior to the utilization of that 4 million that it happens, then great. But you're out to build that business, right? And impact as many as you can. With the scale that you have,
Yeah,
no doubt. But that's the right approach. I agree.
Yeah, and the reality is, like, we're never going to be able to build a business that is going to be the size of putting this in the hands of the big strategics, like the Striker. We're not trying to build $100 million business plus, with 4 million. Yeah, obviously, we wouldn't be able to do that with 4 million, but we're just trying to get it to a point to demonstrate scalability. Doing it in, the plan is to never go full national launch. That would cost a fortune from a sales channel. It's to these 4 geographies, increase these geographies, and just not have full geographical coverage. So it would just cost a hell of a lot, and then you have to get that on the back end, which just increases the pressure. It's a never-ending cycle.
But tell me, I do have one more question I wanted to ask. Relative to meetings that, we'll call it conferences or whatever, obviously you can have the traditional ones. Are you planning to have a booth more so in 2026, or what are you thinking?
It's a really great question. And I go back and forth on this a lot. And we have done booths in the past. I would say AAOS is, it has become more of a B2B type of conference. So I think from a customer perspective, and the nice thing is, our partnership with Core Medical, they have a booth every year. We're able to partner with them with that. But in terms of the customer facing meetings, until we really start scaling and, going a more of a larger launch, certainly beyond our limited alpha launch, that's the point we'll do, more booths. But again, I'm a big believer in, you're going to do a booth, you've got to do something with it, like do a lab while you're there, or something that's not just, standing behind a booth. Like it just doesn't, you don't get the return without doing something alongside it.
Completely. And speaking of labs, are you planning that into as you go to market and continue to market? Are you guys thinking of doing series of labs for, not just one doc, but like at that facility in that geography? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, because it is a new approach, it is a new category. Certainly, initially, we will need to do labs. Just trying to do it in a cost-effective way. Because again, we're trying to do this on 4 million. So it's certainly for the alpha launch. We want to make sure these alpha surgeons have a full cadaveric lab, a fully confident train. Once they start to do cases, and then we utilize them to train other surgeons, we're hoping we can tap into more sore bones than doing cadaveric labs to try and reduce the cost. So that's certainly the goal. We're also looking at doing more animal-focused labs. So, for instance, using a metacarpal equivalent for a rabbit femur to do that, as opposed to a full-blown cadaveric lab. So we're looking at ways to reduce the cost, because, again, we will end up spending a heck of a lot on cadaveric labs to scale this. So we're trying to do it as efficiently as possible.
Well, Sarah, it was great having you. Congratulations on all the success you've had so far, and I have no doubt that this is going to be a big hit. And you'll be up there in MNBC in 2 years as one of the exited companies, and you can tell us all how amazing it is.
This was your second year to present, right?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Second year.
So there's been
I've been in the job 3 days, and I presented last year.
I think I remember that. Yeah, and there's been, there's a trend that you can see through MNVC. Not saying MNVC is the end all be all, but there's a trend of somewhere in the window of the 3rd to the 5th presentation time frame. So 3 to 5 years total of presenting. Boom, it hits.
So there you go. You're 2/3 of the way there.
I shared that because Gary and I paid a lot of attention to that over the years.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he should share that data. It'd be interesting.
Agreed.
Well, congratulations again.
It was great. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's been super fun, and we'll be watching very closely, and I'm sure we will see you down the road soon. Sarah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, this will do it for another episode of the MedTech Jam Session. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much.